Well, thank you. My name is Rocky Moretti. Moretti is Moretti, and I'm the Director of Policy and Research with TRIP. TRIP is a transportation nonprofit research organization based in Washington, D.C. Today's virtual seminar, we are going to release the report that we prepared on California's transportation system. After I give initial comments on the findings of the report, we're going to hear from Senator Dave Cortese, who's also the chair of the California Senate Transportation Committee. And then we'll hear from Assembly Member Lori Wilson, who's the chair of the California State Assembly Transportation Commission. And then we'll hear from Commissioner Joseph Cruz of the California Transportation Commission. After our comments, we'll open it up for questions, and any media through the chat, through the raised hand or the chat function can indicate they have a question. And at that point, my colleague Carolyn Kelly will elevate you to the panel so that you can interact with us and ask your questions. Also, if there's media that would also like comments in Spanish, once we conclude the news conference, if you indicated that you'd also would like to have comments in Spanish, we'll at that point reopen the news conference using the same Zoom invite for interviews in Spanish. The report itself takes a look at the latest data in terms of the condition of the system, both roads, highways, and bridges, but also traffic safety for motorists, pedestrian, and bicyclists. And then finally, the reliability of the system, which has an impact on daily life in terms of time spent in congestion, and also the impact on freight. And in the report, we've broken data down by the state's largest urban areas. During my initial comments, I'll give comments for Los Angeles, Sacramento, San Diego, and the San Francisco, Oakland area. And if there's reporters that would like comments for the additional urban areas, just indicate that. And during the question and answer period, I can also give that additional data. Let's turn to some of the key findings of the report. In California, like across the country, we saw a significant drop in vehicle travel during the COVID-19 pandemic, and then a slow return in travel. In California in 2025, where travel's up over 1%, we've seen the state slowly get back to pre-COVID levels. This year, vehicle travel will be about 5% below the level that we saw before COVID. The state, as growth comes back to the state, including population growth, has faced significant challenges in providing a system that's reliable, safe, and also well-maintained. And back in 2017, the legislature passed the SB1 legislation that increased funding by about $5 billion a year. That's been critical in helping the state address its transportation challenges. And then in 2021, the federal bipartisan infrastructure bill passed, which also provided an additional $25 billion for highways and transit in California over a 5-year period, which expires approximately a year from now on September 30th, 2026. While this additional funding clearly has been very helpful, unfortunately, since the beginning of 2022, inflation in highway construction costs, which is a function of labor and materials, has increased by 48%. And that's had a significant negative impact on the state's ability to address its transportation challenges. Another funding challenge is as the state takes steps to reduce its greenhouse emissions and transition to electric vehicles and other steps, it will have a significant impact on the state's collection of fees on gasoline taxes. And the California Legislative Analyst Office estimates that will reduce revenues by $4.4 billion over the next decade. Let me turn to some of the key findings in the report. The report notes that approximately a half of California's major state and locally maintained roads and highways are in poor condition. Let's take a look at what that means in individual urban areas. The TRIP report notes that 61% of the TRIP report notes that 61% of major roadways in the Los Angeles area are rated in poor condition, and another 21% are rated in mediocre condition, resulting in the average motorist losing $1,256 annually in additional vehicle operating costs because of driving on rough roads. The TRIP report found that 48% of major roadways in the Sacramento area are rated in poor condition, and another 22% are rated in mediocre condition, costing the average driver an additional $1,062 annually in the cost of driving on rough roads. The TRIP report found that 29% of major roadways in the San Diego area are in the TRIP report found that 29% of major roads in the San Diego area are rated in poor condition, and another 27% are rated in mediocre condition, costing the average area motorist $786 annually in additional vehicle operating costs as a result of driving on rough roads. The TRIP report found that 49% of major roadways in the San Francisco-Oakland area are rated in poor condition, and another 24% are rated in mediocre condition, with the average area motorist spending an additional $1,106 annually in the cost of driving on rough roads. The report also took a look at the impact of the reliability of the state's transportation system, particularly in urban areas, as it impacts the public. Our report found that in the Los Angeles area, we estimate that the average motorist is spending an additional 124 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion and wasting 36 gallons of fuel, costing the average Los Angeles area motorist $3,478 annually in the value of lost time and wasted fuel. The TRIP report finds in the Sacramento area that the average motorist is spending an additional 62 hours annually stuck in traffic and wasting 29 gallons of fuel due to traffic congestion, costing them $1,518 annually in the value of lost time and the cost of wasted fuel. The TRIP report found in the San Diego area that the average motorist is spending an additional 67 hours annually stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion and wasting 36 gallons of fuel, costing these drivers $2,085 annually in the value of lost time and wasted fuel. In the San Francisco-Oakland area, the TRIP report estimates that the average motorist is spending 111 hours additionally stuck in traffic due to traffic congestion and wasting 38 gallons of fuel annually, costing the average driver $3,406 annually in the value of lost time and wasted fuel. The report also took a look at bridges and notes that 5% of California's bridges are rated in poor condition and another 48% are rated in fair condition. The report also took a close look at traffic safety in California and notes that over the last 5 years, from 2019 to 2024, there were 24,508 people killed in traffic crashes in California. That number is 24% higher than just a decade ago. And although the number of fatalities has decreased over the last 3 years after traffic fatalities in California peaked in 2021, the reality is with nearly 5,000 people a year being killed in traffic crashes, it is a tremendous cost to California in terms of lost lives and even economic costs. The report also took a look at the share of these fatalities that were of either pedestrians or bicyclists and found that over the last 5 years that 30% of traffic fatalities in California are of pedestrian and bicyclists. The U.S. Department of Transportation has put out a very comprehensive approach called the Safe Systems Approach to improving traffic safety. And certainly a key part of that is improving the safety of infrastructure for motorists, for pedestrians and bicyclists, but making those improvements, which are very cost effective in terms of the cost of these improvements, still require both state and local transportation agencies to have adequate resources. Finally, the report points out that with $2.8 trillion worth of goods being shipped to and from sites in California annually, it's absolutely vital that the state have a reliable freight transportation system. In fact, as the report points out, the value of goods shipped by trucks in California when adjusted for inflation is anticipated to double by the year 2050. So let me conclude there. We have several other excellent speakers that we want to hear from. Senator, we'd like to hear your comments.
Oh, thank you, Rocky. Appreciate it very much. Appreciate the folks who are here for the news conference that are helping us get the word out. That's always something that I know we appreciate. The two transportation chairs here and labor leaders as well appreciate, because it's very difficult for us to get the word out on something like this and on these issues ourselves. I thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the investment in getting the TRIP report out. It's just so critical. Sure, there's aspects of it, that represent to some extent political Achilles heel for some of us, and we pay attention. I haven't seen a poll over my career, which has spanned more than a couple of decades, of constituents of voters that didn't indicate traffic congestion and road condition, like potholes, being ranked in the top one or two of concerns, no matter what else is going on in our state or in our community. Roads, highways, bridges, public transit, bike and pedestrian systems that we're just talking about, they're the lifelines that connect California to jobs, education, healthcare, commerce, and recreation. And for me, TRIP's findings remind me that not only are these not luxuries, but they're essential to economic growth. And we sometimes tend to get so focused on the individual return on investment of a specific project. What does this bridge cost? What does this train cost? And the fact of the matter is that this investment in infrastructure returns on investment in a way that's immeasurable, oftentimes over decades. And we need to stay the course. That does require stable investment. And we heard those numbers about major roads being in poor and mediocre condition. Again, that isn't lost on me as a transportation chair at the Senate level, or as a rank and file member of the California State Senate. And I can assure you that our focus on doing whatever the state can do to fund that infrastructure is a day-to-day issue. Getting people home from work on time is a day-to-day issue as well, and an important political issue. So those are key themes here in the TRIP report, and things that obviously we're therefore urged to continue working on. With population continuing to grow, we really have this kind of yin-yang going on, where the population has grown 16% in the state, regardless of or irrespective of reports of the state's demise. 16% since 2000, over the last 25 years. Obviously, we're right on the brink of 40 million people. That puts pressure on existing infrastructure and maintenance, and what we call fix it first from a policy level. We have to do that. But it also tells us that it's that infrastructure that enabled that very growth, that infrastructure that was put together over the last couple of generations. As a person whose generation presided over the development of Silicon Valley here in my home district of San Jose, I know firsthand that investment doesn't occur from the private sector unless streets and roads, even curbs, gutters, street lights, let alone major highway systems, rail systems, and commuter rail are put together. That is something that we have to continue to focus on and match going forward. Some of us this year took on a bill, SB 695, prioritizing state transportation projects that build climate resilience through major infrastructure upgrades. I know those who serve with us on the California Transportation Commission, like Mr. Cruz, who's here today, will be the first to say that the state needs to come up with the capability for dealing with the sudden response that's needed when something happens, like what we saw in the LA fire, what we've seen with other climate-related catastrophic type concerns around the transportation sector. We don't have line items sitting in our budget for those kinds of needs, and we need to make sure that that's the case going forward. Lastly, again, I can't emphasize enough why this report matters to the economy. The report itself shows that 7.1 million California jobs depend directly on our transportation system. And that's growing. That's growing. The transportation infrastructure industry itself supports 420,000 full-time jobs, generating $17.8 billion in wages, good paying jobs, generally union jobs. Every $1 spent on these investments generates $3.40 in economic output. That's why we have to stay committed, stay the course, and continue to work on stable, sustainable, long-term transportation funding. I'm with you all on that. And I know my friend, the Assembly Transportation Chair, Lori Wilson, who does a tremendous job in our other house in her capacity, someone who works well with me and I with her, shares many of these same concerns, and I'm eager to hear from her next. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Now we're going to hear from Assembly Member Lori Wilson.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. And like Senator Cortese, thank you for the investment made to get this essential data to be able to drive policy decisions here in the state. And I want to thank my senator and my counterpart in the transportation realm of the legislature for his kind words. I agree that we work really well together, and he has been a wonderful collaborative partner over this last year. And so here's the deal. As chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee, I express wholeheartedly the need to increase folks' quality of life. I do that as a legislature, just in my role here in the state, but and particularly as it relates to transportation, that means everyone having equal access to all forms of state transportation options. Ensuring that there is an adequate funding for these options is absolutely critical. And that's why the TRIP report is an important tool. So thank you again for that investment. It really does demonstrate that California's transportation system continues to face significant funding challenges. And without consistent, adequate investment, California's roads, bridges, transit systems, and active transportation infrastructure cannot meet the demands of our people and this economy. Which brings us to why this funding matters. As TRIP illustrates, Californians rely on transportation every single day, whether it's commuting to work, getting children to school, or receiving deliveries at home. It's about improving our multimodal transportation system because it's essential. It's essential to enhancing the safety of our traveling public. Whether you're going by bus, by car, bicycle, it doesn't matter. Our transportation infrastructure system should provide access to economic opportunity, education, healthcare, and other essential services. It should meet the mobility needs of all Californians because we know that nothing moves without transportation infrastructure. It guides how we move in and around a community. I always say it gets us to grandma's house. And we know that's a high aspect of quality of life. And so we know that access and connectivity to jobs, healthcare, education, and goods movement are only possible with a safe, reliable, multimodal transportation system. And California's continued economic competitiveness depends on our ability to maintain and improve this system. And it will require continued transportation funding commitment. And without this investment, this report warns us of economic stagnation, worsening road conditions, higher crash rates, and lost productivity, which leads us to the funding gap threat. State and local transportation funding currently relies heavily on revenues for fuel taxes and other fees on gas-powered vehicles to pay for infrastructure improvements. However, as gas-powered vehicles become more fuel efficient and we transition to zero-emission vehicles, these revenues are declining. Passed in 2017, SB1 SB1 helped us close some of the funding gaps to address California's transportation infrastructure. However, as this report notes, it does not fully address the impacts of non-gasoline vehicles. We must consider other equitable funding options to ensure that our users are paying their fair share for using our roads and highways. Excuse me, there was a light. And so these really are let me talk about a little bit the consequences of underfunding. TRIP calculates that 24.2 billion in added vehicle operating costs. We're talking about repairs, fuel, tire wear, all of that is due to poor roads. It was noted that you said earlier, Rocky, and I appreciated that amount it's costing the individual person over $1,000 in additional cost. $1,000 when we're talking about a time of affordability, over $1,000 a year in additional costs. And we know total 55 billion in lost revenue annually is due to congestion, wasted fuel, and travel delays. Traffic crashes cost Californians $37.7 billion in annual economic costs, including 12.6 billion linked to road features. Now, these numbers are not abstract. As I said, this is about affordability. These represent higher bills for families and businesses, lost time, and more importantly, preventable tragedies. And so what really is the road ahead? We have to modernize funding strategies to keep pace with technological change, shifting fuel types, and the growing demand for multimodal transportation options. That's why I'm glad to be chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee. I'm glad to have a partner like Senator Cortese, who's ready to deal with these issues and partner with folks like you who have brought out and made this investment in the TRIP report. So in closing, a well-funded transportation system isn't just about roads. It's about lives, livelihoods, and economic opportunity. The TRIP report shows opportunities for where we need to focus on our resources and where we need to further seek and prioritize funding. This is critically important for California to continue to maintain its economic competitiveness and quality of life. We are the fourth largest economy in the world. Our transportation infrastructure should look like it. And so without it, we risk California falling behind and we risk failing the people of California. Thank you so much for giving the time to speak today, and I look forward to the continued discussion.
Thank you, Assembly Member. That was very helpful. And now we're going to hear from Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Rocky, and good morning, everybody. Let me first by thanking you, the folks at TRIP, for putting together a report. It's vital information that we need and data points that we look at as we make decisions to invest in our transportation network in California. I'm Joe Cruz. I'm on the California Transportation Commission. I have the honor of working with both chairs of the Senate Transportation Committee, Senator Cortese, as well as the chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee, Assemblymember Lori Wilson, who I know are committed to ensuring that our state has a safe, I want to lead with safe because it's important, a safe system, a financially sustainable multimodal system, and a system that improves the economy and gets people to school, to work, and creates good opportunities as far as jobs throughout California. As a commissioner, I see firsthand how vital our roads are, how vital our highways, bridges are to the daily lives of all Californians. The TRIP report reminds us that transportation is not just about roads and bridges, it's about people. It's about whether families can get to school, they can get to work, businesses can thrive, and communities can grow sustainably. California is a state on the move. Our population and the economy continue to grow, and with that growth comes responsibility. We must ensure our transportation system keeps pace not with today's needs, but with the demands of the future and what that looks like down the road. We must ensure that we're planning safe and modern and resilient systems, and that investment reflects our values as Californians. And it means ensuring that every Californian, whether they live in a city, a suburb, or a rural community, has access to reliable and efficient transportation. That's important. While I'm here today as a commissioner, I also know from my background as a labor leader in California that every project we approve is more than just concrete and steel. It's jobs. It's middle-class jobs. It's training. It's careers that support families and strengthen communities throughout the state. When we invest in infrastructure, we also invest in people. Apprenticeship programs, training programs, long-term career paths are how we ensure that California's workforce is ready to build and maintain the transportation system of the future. And when we work with those workers on the job and we get them good paying jobs, it's not just a paycheck. It also fuels our economy. It drives our economy. As Assembly Member Lori Wilson said, the fourth largest economy in the world, the most active ports on the West Coast. We need to make those investments that keep us competitive. Every project that we invest in from the CTC creates a ripple effect. Wages spent in local businesses, we have stronger communities, and again, we become more resilient. Our investment priorities and goals are not mutually exclusive. We can achieve a safe and reliable system that also addresses impacts from climate, sea level rise, as the senator said, make improvements to our safety network where folks can get out of communities if they are threatened by fire or flood. That's important, and as well as allowing our public safety folks access to these areas are priorities that we have at the CTC. The TRIP report demonstrates that California can continue to be a leader through intentional and sustained investments in our transportation system. This is not just government working alone. It's labor, it's business, it's community leaders that all must be at the table together finding paths towards the future. As a commissioner, I'm committed to ensuring that every dollar we invest delivers value, and that's important value for California today and for generations to come. The TRIP report is a call to action. It shows us where we're falling short and where we can lead. We as Californians must be united in our commitment to building a transportation system that is safe, modern, equitable, and continues to support our economy and create those good paying jobs. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We are committed to ensuring those investments address our most vital concerns in California, and the TRIP report reinforces where we should spend those dollars and improve safety, which is still vital in California. So thanks again.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to ask my colleague, Carolyn Kelly, to explain how we'll move forward in terms of answering questions.
Sure.
Carolyn?
Thanks, Rocky, and thanks again to all our speakers who've joined us this morning. I'm Carolyn Kelly. I'm the Director of Communication and Research for TRIP. As Rocky noted earlier, we'll now be able to have a brief Q&A session with our panelists this morning. The way that will work is if you've got a question for our panel, you can use either the raise hand function or you can submit your question to the chat if you'd prefer that I read the question to the panelists. So while we wait for some questions to come in, I'll also note that the full report, as well as news releases with specific data for each of the 6 urban areas, are on the TRIP website right now. You can find that at tripnet, tripnet.org. We'll also have brief video clips of Rocky covering the data highlights for each of the urban areas. Those are available on our website as well. There's about a 2-minute clip just with the data for each of the urban areas if you're interested in that as well. So again, you can find that all on the TRIP website. I don't see any questions that have come in just yet, but while we wait for any questions, Rocky or any of our speakers, if there's anything you'd like to add, feel free to go ahead.
You know what I ask of each of our speakers from your position, based on the impact of inflation. I mean, is there a sense that projects are moving slower through the pipeline? Is there a concern that inflation is really impacting the ability of the state to make the progress you'd like to see happening with your transportation system?
I would say that, of course, we have, impact from inflation in terms of rising construction costs and affordability from a consumer standpoint. But we've always had inflation at some factor or another for as long as I've been an adult in the private sector and in the banking industry years ago, and an elected official for 30 years. It's something that we deal with. I think what can be difficult politically, and something that we have to be vigilant about, is those who would use inflation as an excuse for slowing down or stopping or stunning our growth. We need to stay committed. Let me just say this. I hope Chair Wilson doesn't mind. I don't think she will, but she and I recently visited the Ford Motor plant what a tremendous confluence of the Industrial Revolution, robotics and modern AI, and good paying union jobs. People employed just like they were years ago. We can't afford to have that stop or slow down because somebody thinks that might be a good time to keep our powder dry because of inflation. I think we need to double down, and that's what those industries are doing. And it was very clear when we had discussions with the people who were helping to put automobiles and transportation systems on the road. They're committed. They're committed to the next wave of infrastructure, and they expect us to be as well.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone else wants to add a comment to that.
I'll just
I would-
echo,
I'm sorry.
if you don't
Go ahead,
mind,
Chair Wilson, you're
go
good.
ahead.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry.
I wanted to echo the comments of the senator in terms of before I came into the legislature, I led the financial operations for a home builder, one of their regional offices, and inflation. And I was the pro forma person, right? And looking at it from land development all the way to delivering the home to the consumer. And we always dealt with inflation year after year, yet we continue to build, we continue to make investment. And that investment continued to give us a return. And so I think that when we talk about inflation, it is just a matter of doing business and doing business in California or really across the nation. And so I think that it's extremely important to continue to invest even in times of inflation. You will eventually get that return on investment. And this is not just about getting a return on the investment and the traditional sense of dollar, but that investment on the quality of life of the people we serve. They deserve good transportation infrastructure. They deserve for us to invest year after year. And that's what's extremely important. And so anybody who uses that as an excuse not to invest never took economics 101. That's how I look at it.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, I would just add and echo, time is money, obviously, when it comes to infrastructure in California, highways, it could be affordable housing. And I think the legislature did a good job of trying to create opportunities to streamline the permitting process in California. When it comes to highway and roadway construction, obviously the price of steel, the price of concrete is going up in throughout the nation, and those are concerns. We're seeing between 10 and 15% cost increases as we delay projects. So it's important that we move projects from the planning table to construction if we have the available funds as soon as we can, and we are doing that. And I'm optimistic that we can continue to do that. But the inflation issue is real, and it's something that we're going to have to grapple with. We're also going to grapple with just a shortfall in funding that we're going to experience down the road as we transition to cleaner vehicles. And I think we're doing a good job of trying to grapple with that and get our arms around what that means and how we can address that through other alternatives as far as financial mechanisms. So thanks again.
We have one more question from Keith Mizuguchi with KQED Radio. He had submitted to the chat. I'll read the question. And that is, with the state's budget challenges and questions about whether federal funding will be as plentiful under the Trump administration, where do you see money for the infrastructure investments coming from?
We're seeing more and more focus on P3, public-private partnerships where we can, where that makes sense. Clearly with things like high-speed rail, that's a necessity. You can't just depend on state or federal money at any level to, pull off the largest infrastructure, investment in two continents. It's going to take, private sector investment as well. It's something that we need to focus more on in our work. How we deal with road usage, how we deal with, as my counterpart Chair Wilson has been so focused on, how we deal with maintenance vis-a-vis declining gas tax. That has in effect been a sort of public-private coalition that has always supported a gas tax that's now declining. These are all things that we're going to have to reinvent ourselves going forward. But I think more and more, it's not a cliche as maybe it once was. We're going to see public-private partnership. When you think about EV infrastructure, for example, in the future, we spent a great deal of time the last couple of days the chair and I talking about, what kind of a coalition is it going to take? It can't just be government to make things like EV infrastructure, charging stations, especially in private sector developments, to make that as ubiquitous as it needs to be. So we'll get there. We just need to think that way.
Sure, and I agree with Senator Cortese, especially around the P3, because that's just a critical part of funding our transportation infrastructure into the future. And we see it not only in California, but throughout the nation. And, I'm focused on this right now as chair of transportation on the assembly side of how do we have a sustainable revenue in the future to fund our transportation system, given the fact that our gas tax revenues are declining. And here's what I know from doing business before is that in business, we need stability and we need to be able to foresee and do long-term planning. And the same thing happens in a person's personal economic household, right? Is they need that stability and be able to see long-term. So if you know what your costs are related to transportation long-term, you can plan for that and manage your family finance as well. And so looking for a way to do this in a sustainable way where we have the partnership, not just of the state, federal and private, but also that contribution from, our local person who lives in California. And last but not least, I'll say that although we have had this, antagonistic relationship with our federal, who we used to call partners, but it's hard to say that so much now, their investment in California has been centered around, or their withdrawal of investment in California has been centered around high-speed rail, something that I'm a strong proponent of, and I know my counterpart in the Senate is as well. But we're not seeing the same thing for those surface roads transitions. I know there's a federal delegation coming out to Northern California in October, and I look forward to being able to meet with them to talk to them about, our highways and byways and continuing that investment. And that's a benefit to every single Californian, no matter which side of the aisle you're on. And so I know that our federal partners will continue to make those types of investment. And I have seen, some frustration around, like I said, the withdrawal funds around high-speed rail, because I think that California is an economic engine as being the fourth largest economy for the entire country. And so when you hurt California, you hurt the country. And so hopefully, cooler heads will prevail and some sanity will come back into making sure that we're funding California in a way that not only benefits Californians, but benefit the entire nation.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I would just add, Rocky, that obviously SB1 and the extension of SB1 with now an index has been incredible for our investment in highway and roadway infrastructure, and as well as transit throughout California. We see it every single day. But another big deal is the self-help counties. There's 25 counties in California who have passed a sales tax increment to fund transportation locally, and that generates about $4.5 billion to allow them to match both federal and state funding to move their projects. And it's important that we continue to help counties who are going to see an end at some point of those dollars and help them extend their self-help county measures to allow them to continue to compete for these dollars. So it's important that we look at a threshold lowering, or we look at opportunities to help them, like I said, move to the ballot and get folks to support it. I understand it's difficult now given the economy to talk about taxes and fees, but we'll continue to push hard and look at timing to get those situated where we can be successful at the ballot box. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe that's all the questions.
Mhm.
That's correct. So again, I want to thank all three of our speakers. You all did an excellent job, and we thank everyone who came in and to view today's press conference. We are going to go ahead and close our news conference, which will also shortly post a copy of on the website. And throughout the day, Trip is available for interviews on the report in English and in Spanish. So again, if there's any follow-up questions, we'll be here the rest of the day. Thank you.